Hello, I'm John Rossi, a touring drummer with a love of all things animal. When I'm on the road, I visit as many zoos, aquariums. Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? Hey, what's going on there? Hello? 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 We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you Rossifari Zoo news. News you can use from the world of zoos and conservation. Every week, we bring you breaking news and analysis from around the globe, featuring the animals you love and the people who care for them. And here's your anchorman, John Rossi. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome back to Rossifari Zoo News, your look at everything going on in the world of zoos, aquariums, conservation, and general animal weirdness. Before we get to all of that, I do want to drop a quick reminder to make sure that you hit subscribe so you don't miss any Zoo News episodes or any of Tuesday's interview episodes. Make sure that you're following along at Rossifari on the socials, at Rossifari Pod on the TikTok machine, and don't forget that you can support the podcast for as little as $3 a month by going to patreon.com/Rossifari. So as far as my life is concerned, I am still here in Fort Worth, Texas, and I am recording this right before heading into our final dress rehearsal for the run of Million Dollar Quartet at Casa Mañana. I'm having a great time down here, though I'm not going to lie, we have been very, very busy. Our director is doing the show for the first time and has a really cool, really unique vision for a lot of the lighting and that kind of stuff. And it has required days of tech to get it all right, but it is going to look so good. On top of that, the cast is absolutely incredible. So if you happen to be in the Texas area, grab some tickets and come see the show. And, of course, let me know you're coming so we can say hi to each other. I already have plans to see a few people here, and I'm really, really excited about that. Oh, and speaking of things I'm excited about and opportunities to see me, if you're listening to this and you're planning on attending the AZA conference in Calgary, don't forget that the Safe Red Panda program will be having our first ever open meeting from 9 to 10 a.m. on Monday, September 16th, the first, real day of the conference. So if you're at the conference, you can come and learn about the program, ask questions, all those good things. We are really excited to be launching this one in a more public way. So if you're at the conference, please stop by. And don't forget to follow the social media platforms of Safe Red Panda. We are at Safe Red Panda on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm currently running all of those accounts, though I'm sure we'll have other people stepping up over time as well. So come say hi and support this new program that I am obviously very excited to be a part of. And then one last thing before we get to Zoo News this week, because I joke about this, periodically on the podcast. I know I've mentioned this before, but I am one of those people who is a big believer in pedestrian crossing right away. I will cross at a zebra crossing or a crosswalk, as they call them in the States, or whatever. And fully trust that if I do that, I'm going to get to live and that the cars will stop. And I'm pretty anal about it. And I actually made a joke on this podcast just a couple weeks ago where I said, I saw this thing online that said, I am going to die the way nature intended by getting hit by a car as I'm crossing at a crosswalk. I forget the exact phrasing, but it was something like that. And I was like, yeah, that's me. And I feel obligated to say this since I joke about it on here, but I was almost in my own deaths section today. I was crossing a 6-lane highway right across the street from the theater. There's a crosswalk, and 5 of the lanes stopped for me. And the 6th one didn't see me. I think the guy was looking at his phone from what I could see. A little sports car almost took me out. I had to jump out of the way. And luckily I was able to and land on the curb there. And my dude did see me in time to slam the brakes. Actually was going so fast he swerved and almost caused an accident. But it was really close, and he was very apologetic, and I was okay, and everything was fine. But as somebody who's kind of talked about being pretty strict about that, and this is my right of way, and like I think that's important. Like it is genuinely important for people to respect that. Yeah, I guess I felt the need to share that after my close encounter, and I think I'm going to be maybe a little less forceful about my own belief in the sanctity of crosswalks moving forward. So just an interesting little story that I wanted to share. But enough about my life. Let's get to it.
We've been taking care of pandas and the seals, taking care of pandas, feeding meals. We've been taking care of pandas with Zoo News, taking care of pandas and picking up their poos, pooping out.
Okay, so we're going to start with a headline story, and it's not exactly a big story. It's not like a deep dive, but it's important and it's fun. An organization in Australia called The Project is doing a Marsupial of the Year competition online, and the Lumholtz tree kangaroo is one of the top 21 finalists. Now, this is the first time this competition is being held, and the idea is to help raise awareness of the problems facing marsupials in the wild. The competition includes public voting in order to make the top 10 list, so please, please, please go hit up marsupialoftheyear.com.au, which I will put in the show notes, and vote for the Lumholtz tree kangaroo. Now, from the top 10, the contest will change from just online voting to being based on donations to various conservation organizations, and the donations for the Lumholtz tree roos go directly to Tree Kangaroo Rescue and Conservation Center, the organization I talk about here a lot, led by the tree kangaroo lady, Dr. Karen Coombs. This is the place that I want to go volunteer for a month at some point. Now, I'm not going to lie. The species faces an uphill battle, not only in life, but in this competition, as some celebrities and other organizations have already started supporting other marsupials, but every vote for the tree roos can help. It is especially important to vote now, because if tree roos do make the top 10, then those donations will start pouring into the Tree Roo Rescue and Conservation Center. So this is an absolutely incredible way to help raise money for tree kangaroos without actually having to spend any of your own money. As a matter of fact, why don't you hit pause at the end of this sentence and go to, again, marsupialoftheyear.com.au right now and vote, and then come back to the podcast. I'll wait. Okay. How long should I wait? Okay. I'm going to assume that they're typing it in now. There might be a typo, so I need to wait for a second. Then they have to scroll to find the Lumholtz. Oh, wait. I guess if you paused, I don't actually have to wait. And that means that you're back now and here. Anyway, but hey, thanks for coming back. Good job voting, because I know you voted. You voted, right? Right? Anyway, that brings us to our births for the week. The most important birth in this entire episode took place in Massachusetts this week. On August 27th at 7:19 p.m., Callan James Larson was born to Danny and Paul Larson. This human child, or humelet as I like to say, is doing well. Mother, father, big sister, and canine bestie Shine are all doing an incredible job taking care of the little one. Now, in this species, it is common for older siblings to have a little bit of jealousy towards a new youngling, but it turns out that Raina is doing amazingly well with the little baby, at least in part because of the incredible training received from Danny. Now, with the current population of just over 8 billion on the planet, this birth isn't one that's going to have a huge impact directly on the conservation of the species. But I do believe it will prove to be an incredible birth nonetheless, and I know that I can't wait to get up that way and see the little goober. And speaking of little goobers, Der Gruen Zoo Wuppertal in Germany has announced the birth of a red panda cub. Mom Uma is doing a great job taking care of the pandlet, so much so, in fact, that the zoo staff hasn't had to step in at all. So they don't even know if it's male or female at this time. But vaccinations are due soon, so they should know in a short amount of time. Congrats to the zoo, who actually just recently announced that they are going to start supporting Red Panda Network as part of their conservation work. Good timing, y'all. The Philadelphia Zoo has announced the birth of Kari, a red-tailed monkey. Mom Lulu and Dad Anmom are doing a great job taking care of the little one, which you can already see in the primate passage of the zoo. The Henry Doorley Zoo in Omaha has welcomed a female pygmy hippopotamus calf to the family. The little one is named Adama, and she is already exploring her habitat with Mom Chommel. She's currently only 50 pounds, and take it from someone who has seen a baby pygmy hippo in person, this is worth the trip if you can get to Omaha. Actually, as a short little aside, the Henry Doorley Zoo in Omaha is absolutely incredible. It's one of the biggest and best zoos I have ever seen. And it's actually really close to Lincoln, Nebraska as well, where Lincoln Children's Zoo is located, where they have some amazing red pandas, a beautiful new giraffe exhibit. They have tree kangaroos. It's a really awesome facility as well. It is well worth a trip out to Omaha and Lincoln to get those two zoos crossed off on your list. And honestly, I had a ton of fun in both towns, like outside of the zoos. There's a lot of really cool stuff to do in Omaha and in Lincoln. Lincoln actually really surprised me with how much fun it was. So if any of y'all are trying to figure out a fall trip to go check out some zoos, I recommend Nebraska, which apparently has the state slogan of Nebraska, it's not for everybody, but it is for zoo lovers.
It's time for interrupting John.
Okay, so yes, I'm interrupting my own podcast because I just said that thing and I want to. Anyway, this is goofy, but it's important to know. So after I said that, I was like, that Nebraska thing, I remember it being true from when I gigged there, but I should probably look it up and make sure I'm actually saying it right and everything. And then I was like, or was that just a joke that the theater in Nebraska told us? So I looked this up, and the official tourism slogan of Nebraska was Nebraska. Honestly, it's not for everyone. Until February of this year, when they officially changed it, which makes me really, really sad. I think it's absolutely hilarious, and I liked it a lot, but it is gone now. And so you may be wondering, what is the current tourism slogan of Nebraska? Although, honestly, if you're wondering that, I'm wondering about you, but I can officially say that now the tourism slogan of Nebraska is not decided yet. This is why I should probably do research before I, figure these things out. Okay, anyway, back to the zoo news. The Fresno Chaffee Zoo had a big announcement this week. The first-time mom, Amale, has given birth to a healthy male baby elephant. Now, elephant gestation takes almost 2 years, so this has been a moment the zoo has been waiting for a very long time. This is the second elet born at the zoo recently, so it's a super exciting time for the Fresno Chaffee Zoo. And last but not least in births, Tanganyika Wildlife Park has announced the birth of 3 reticulated giraffes, making one of the largest herds in the country that much larger. All 3 are doing well and are adorable. Congrats to Tanganyika. Now, we move on to our deaths section. And much as we started our births with a non-zoo birth, we now start our deaths with the same thing. This week, Dr. Laura Schenk, who has been such a huge contributor to the podcast for a while now, and her family, Cinna, Sarah, and Jeremy, said goodbye to Newt. Newt was a 5-year-old guinea pig who lived with the Schenks, including his guinea pig brother, Dumbledore. Newt was a super sweet animal that I had the pleasure of spending some time with, and he was very loved by the entire family. Sadly, something, possibly a growing tumor, started causing Newt to have recurring nosebleeds, and it became too much for him, so the family made the correct and humane decision to euthanize. He will be greatly missed, and the family will be sure to give Dumbledore lots of additional love and support as he adjusts to life without Newt. Sending all my love to the family. Busch Gardens in Tampa has announced the passing of Jim, a 37-year-old male western lowland gorilla. This is the second gorilla to pass away at the facility in the last month, which must be incredibly challenging for the keepers there. I'm sure the situation is not being made any easier by the fact that some news stations in Florida have taken to bringing on an anti-zoo veterinarian to talk about these two deaths, as well as the great ape deaths we mentioned at Jacksonville last week due to Shigella, to speculate and make accusations about what may be happening at these facilities without them having any knowledge at all of what is actually happening, which is so irresponsible. I'm actually shocked to see a medical professional that is willing to do that. I can't believe that the news is having somebody on that's willing to do that. I know it makes for more views and clicks, but I really wish that, real news organizations wouldn't just keep going after low-hanging fruit and would actually do some research and understanding on their own. So yeah, sending love to the team, both for their losses and for the increased and undeserved scrutiny they suddenly find themselves facing during what is an incredibly hard time. It really bothers me. Brevard Zoo has said goodbye to Bailey, one of the 4-month-old white-nosed coati kits that was born at the zoo. Bailey was suffering from seizures, and there were no answers as to why coming back from any of the diagnostic testing. With no hope of figuring out how to improve her quality of life by handling the seizures medically, the decision was made to euthanize. Now, this one hits extra hard because you may remember from an episode 4 months ago that Bailey was one of the first kits born in U.S. zoos in 7 years. Fortunately, the other ones all seem to be doing just fine. So, sad to say goodbye to Bailey. And then last but not least in our deaths this week, Riverbanks Zoo in South Carolina has announced the passing of Zuri, a 20-year-old male lion. Zuri was the father of 13 cubs while at the zoo, and having spent most of his life there, he had become just a truly beloved part of the family at Riverbanks. Zuri loved to roar in the morning, being the first sound many would hear as they started their day. And while those roars are now gone, his legacy will live on both in the incredible number of children he sired and in the memories his keepers and fans will take with them. And then that brings us to the rest of our zoo news section. We'll start off with 2 stories from the Toronto Zoo. First of all, they had an incident this week at their new orangutan habitat. Kambali, a male orangutan, was able to get out of the habitat. Zoo staff were able to entice him back in easily enough, and they posted about it, were very transparent. And actually, one thing I really liked was their posting included asking guests if they had gotten any photos or videos of what might have happened. And it turned out that a bunch of people did get that information and passed it along to the zoo. And those sources, along with security camera footage, combined to show the zoo that Kambali was able to do some truly acrobatic swinging to get to the area that he got to, something akin to how you'll regularly see squirrels sitting and eating at squirrel-proof bird feeders. Without seeing the pictures from the exhibit, like for a podcast, it would just be too hard to describe. But let's just say that it involved cartwheel-like swinging in the air and all kinds of craziness. Orangutans are really impressive. Anyway, the incident was handled perfectly, and Kambali was happy to return to his home without hesitation, and the zoo is now consulting with international experts to figure out what they have to do to fix the issue. But until those changes can be made, the outdoor orangutan habitat will be closed to the apes. And speaking of the Toronto Zoo, we've been talking about the red panda situation there. Mom Sakura gave birth before succumbing to neurological issues, and one of the 2 cubs passed away because of lack of nutrition and stuff from mom during that whole thing. Well, now the remaining cub is in the ICU at the hospital. She started having sniffling and bouts of diarrhea, so was given numerous tests and x-rays. Those were completed a full week ago, and the zoo posted about them, but as of the time of this recording, there haven't been any more updates. Here's hoping that the cub, currently called Biggie, is able to pull through. That team has just been through so much, they deserve a break. Some huge conservation news coming to you this week out of the Memphis Zoo. For the first time ever, snakelets have been born using a cryopreserved sperm. And yes, that is the real term, as well as how I like to say it. Anyway, in this case, the snakes are Louisiana pine snakes, a threatened species, which has a lot of samples stored in the frozen zoo. The frozen sperm was thawed and then deployed through artificial insemination. Since much of the focus of biobanking has been on mammals, this is a huge win not just for snakes, but for herps in general. The 3 baby snakes that were born from this process were all given genetic testing to make sure it was the frozen sperm that sired them, as female snakes can store sperm and make babies well after reproduction, well after the initial act of reproduction anyway. And some species can even reproduce asexually. Parthenogenesis is a thing in some snake species. However, now that they know that these 3 snakes came from the frozen sperm, we have true proof of concept that biobanking works in reptile conservation. This is a huge win, and it is awesome that the Memphis Zoo is a part of it. Heavy rains in the San Antonio area led to flooding at the San Antonio Zoo this week. The good news is that the animals were all kept safe and the staff got through it unscathed. However, the floods did affect multiple areas in the zoo, including office spaces, the zoo's training room, gift shops, the hippo viewing area, and more. Sadly, this caused the zoo to close for the day, affecting their financial situation and forcing keepers into cleanup mode along with doing their normal duties. If you have a chance to get to the zoo and help them out by buying a ticket, now is the time. I will be there on Monday. The Cincinnati Zoo is offering free admission to all active fire, police, safety, and current and former military personnel from September 6th through September 9th as their way of honoring those who protect the community. Oh, we mentioned the San Antonio Zoo a moment ago, and we're back to them because I threw that Cincinnati thing in the wrong place, but I'm recording fast, so you get to hear it there. Anyway, the San Antonio Zoo have welcomed the hatching of 71 Texas horned lizards, which is part of a conservation collaboration with the Zoo Miami. The program is based at the Center for Conservation and Research at the San Antonio Zoo and is focused on reintroducing the lizards to areas of privately owned land where they have disappeared over the last few decades. Along with breeding the lizards, the program releases the lizards after working with the landowners to ensure the lizards will be as safe as possible. They then track the animals to see how the reintroductions are going. And you might be thinking that seems challenging. How do you put a GPS collar on a tiny baby lizard? Well, it turns out you don't. So the program has trained a group of volunteer dog owners to become horned lizard detection dogs, which then go out and find the lizards and monitor them that way. Absolutely incredible program. I really, 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 really love all of this cool conservation stuff that zoos do just all the time. It's just so good. And actually, speaking of that, we've got 2 more stories in here, both of which are very conservation-y in the Zoo News section. I love it. First, there is a thing that I've seen making its way around the internet that I wanted to talk about on here for a second, because it's both very cool and technically accurate, but there's also a caveat to it. Anyway, the post I've seen going around states that Japanese railway companies have recently started installing turtle tunnels to help turtles cross safely under train tracks to avoid both turtle deaths and train delays. And it is true that these things do exist, and that is their actual purpose, and I support the heck out of that. Now, the context that I wanted to add is that this is not a new thing. It's a program that was started back in 2015. And the reason it is in this section, as opposed to conservation news, is that the tunnels were developed as a project between the West Japan Railway Company and Suma Aqualife Park in Japan. So, yeah, just another awesome way zoos and aquariums are helping animals in their natural habitats. And speaking of that goal, a bunch of zoos, including Smithsonian's National Zoo, the Cincinnati Zoo, and Sedgwick County Zoo, have all announced that Guam kingfishers, also known as sihik, that were hatched and head started at the zoos in question, have officially traveled to Palmyra Atoll in the Pacific Ocean, where they have been reintroduced into the wild. This is a species that has been extinct in the wild for almost 40 years. So this marks a huge conservation milestone for the species, which would be completely gone if not for the work being done by accredited zoos. There is now a wild population of Guam kingfishers for the first time in almost 40 years because of these places. That's amazing. This wild population is the first step in a program that has the larger goal of eventually returning the birds to their native home on the island of Guam, which is where the name Guam kingfisher comes from. So yeah, just a bunch of amazing stories that I just love. And I just, I've had the tree kangaroo video going viral recently, and also for whatever reason, one of my Drumming with Emily the elephant videos has gone viral again this week. And so many anti-zoo people feel the need to just attack, and it's fine. And I actually have engaged politely in discourse with many of these people, and a lot of them have been open to the conversations and have learned about accreditation and stuff like that. And I'm actually I'm not as down on humanity as social media usually makes me. It's been a pretty cool thing. But seeing those initial attacks and trying to talk to people about stories like this and them not realizing it, it's definitely sitting with me this week, which I think is why so many of these stories feature these incredible conservation efforts. But I mean, that's not surprising, and it didn't take extra work on my part because zoos do this stuff all the time. Good accredited zoos are saving species in the wild. And I know I am preaching to the choir, but I'm hoping that some of the people who saw those videos and maybe even had those conversations will listen and will hear this and we'll see that that's what I'm talking about. So anyway, let's move on to our next segment, which is
Conservation news time. Oh yeah.
All right, so this is one of those stories that just makes me shake my head. There is a growing trend of people buying ornaments made of dead bats that are being sold online. And I'm not talking ornaments like Christmas tree ornaments. I'm talking about tchotchkes and knickknacks that you have ornamenting your house. So yeah, a new study reveals that many tiny bat species from Asia are being taken from the wild and killed for this new trend, and that many of the merchants of the ornaments are actually in the United States, which is really awkward. The ornaments in question range from taxidermy specimens mounted in wall frames to jarred bats and even necklaces made out of dead bats. Seriously, dead bat necklaces. I get that goth is a thing, but come on, people. These items have been being sold on Amazon, eBay, and Etsy in increasing numbers, though Etsy has already come out and banned the sale of any of these items. This trend is not just bad for bats. Let's not start a new poaching industry, please. But also for actual good taxidermists who sell properly sourced animals, as many of them will now be under increased scrutiny or possibly even not allowed to sell acceptable, properly sourced items. Which is fine if that's what it takes to keep the bats in the wild safe, but it's just so crazy that a trend of wanting dead bats is now a conservation issue, and that it's a thing in the States, especially. I mean, not to sound all, US centric and stuff, but when I started reading about this whole thing, I definitely thought it was going to be like a, like pangolin scale thing or rhino horn thing where people with ancient beliefs, are doing something stupid. And no, it's just dumb Americans wanting cool stuff. So yeah, hopefully, with the Etsy ban, other places will ban, and this will stop being a thing. Because it People. Anyway, on a much happier, less dead animals note, the northern hairy-nosed wombat has been critically endangered in Queensland, Australia since 1992. And for a long time recently, it has been believed that the species might not be breeding at all anymore. With only about 400 individuals left in the area and a lot of problems facing the ones that are in the wild there. However, recently, a juvenile northern hairy-nosed wombat has been spotted and photographed. So at least 2 of the remaining 400 are breeding. This is a really big deal and a major reason to be excited, even though I do need to point out that one baby isn't going to save the species. Still, this little one is a definite sign of hope for a critically endangered species and shows that at least there can be reproduction happening, which is obviously important. So, very good news. And speaking of babies being good signs, a beaver baby boom is currently taking place in the UK. This is especially important as many of the births are happening in places where the species had been extinct in the wild for centuries. Reintroduction programs, both licensed and unlicensed, interestingly enough, have been wildly successful in both England and Scotland in the last few years. And now those beavers are breeding at an incredibly healthy rate. So before this boom, there were estimated to be between 600 and 800 beavers left in England and around 1,500 in Scotland, and this summer is only helping those numbers grow. Given all the amazing effects beavers have on the ecosystem, this is wonderful news for the UK and for animal conservation in general. And that brings us to...
It's time for other news. It's time for other news. Hey, now, right now, it's time. It's time for other news. Hey, it's a segue to the part called other news.
A newly released study looks at wolf pack movements and illustrates just how much they respect and avoid the territory of other wolf packs. GPS collars tracking different pack movements in different colors show virtually no overlap between the 6 wolf packs that were tracked. They will all go right up to the border of the other pack territories, but once they start to get the smells that they are treading into a different pack's territory, they move away. This is such a great example of how important scent marking and other forms of nonverbal communication, as well as the verbal communication that wolves do, howls and such, are for keeping each pack safe and secure. The visual of this is really stunning. It looks like each pack has their own, it looks like a map where each pack has its own state or country with borders as defined as those of any state or nation that, humans have. It is very cool to see and shows just how incredible and complex and how focused on, staying safe wolves are. And then last but not least, this week, if you're looking for a stunningly beautiful image to brighten your day, Google the following phrase: John Rossi's face. No, I kid. Google piebald moose photographs. A wildlife photographer in Norway has captured amazing photos of a piebald moose, and it really is something special. Piebaldism is a genetic mutation that affects pigmentation, and in this case, it gives the moose large patches of white fur amongst its natural brown coat. And it is a lot of very white coloration. It kind of looks like a gray and white cow pattern, but on a moose. It's really a lot, and it's really beautiful. So fire up your Google machine and check it out.
Oh, animal holidays. Animal holidays. Hey!
All right, it is officially September, which is Save the Tiger Month and Save the Koala Month. And then today, this episode drops on the 6th, which is nothing. Which is frustrating because then the 7th is International Manatee Day, Threatened Species Day, National Hummingbird Day, and International Vulture Awareness Day. The 8th is Iguana Awareness Day and National Bilby Day. And that's it. So, 2 whole days get used this week, but it's 6 animal holidays. absolute silliness. The people who decide these things need to get the Peppermint Narwhal Animal Holidays calendar and, like, figure this out. All right, so there you have it, folks. Another episode of Rossifari Zoo News is done. Let me remind you, in case you forgot to pause earlier on, or maybe you were driving or something, go to marsupialoftheyear.com.au and vote for the Lumholtz tree kangaroo, because this is important and you can help them and it's free. Yay! Now that we've said that, I would also like to say thank you to my Red Panda level patrons, Dr. Laura Schenk, Dr. Stephen Williamson, Barbara Bennett, Jenny Owens, and Kevin Williams. I would also like to say thank you to everyone who contributed to the episode this week, including Anya Keene, Colleen Linehan, Kim Cooley-Croninger, Carrie Kirkpatrick, Kevin Williams, Emily Rockbuck, Matt Patford, Marianne Rossi, Lizard Dunlevy, Jay Meredith, Dr. Laura Schenk, Jacob Zinn, Caitlin Kenny, Rowena White, Ali Malensky, Kay Malensky,
The Malenskys.
and Yoshioka, Miles Rossi, and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Thank you all so much for contributing. We'll be back here on Tuesday to start an adventure up in New England. But until then, remember, friends, the words, newsy credits backwards, are Steiderk Yiswen. The Rossifari podcast is produced, hosted, and engineered by John Rossi. Editing and fact-checking by John and Dr. Zoe Rossi. Our theme song is Sevens by Nathan Burke, performed by Nathan and John. Interrupting John theme and additional voices by Taylor Isaac Gray. You can reach John directly on Instagram and Facebook at Rossifari, or by email at rossifaripod@gmail.com. Rossifari is part of the Daydreamer Media Network. Now, stop listening to me and go visit a zoo. The Peppermint Narwhal Animal